Thank you so much for coming onto the show, Alex.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks for having me. How fun.
Yeah. And we have a little co-host here, Bjorn. He'll be asking you lots of questions as well, okay?
Awesome. Can't wait. Thanks, Bjorn.
All right. Well, so you have two children.
One girl, Dakota, she's just a little over 4 years old, and Brixton is a boy, and he just turned one last month on the
Okay.
19th.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool. And just curious, is he named after a city in the UK or an area?
he is. Well, sort of. That was the kind of how the name was brought into our kind of vortex, but we just loved it. Brixton is a neighborhood in London. And my husband is British. So yes, we've been around that hood.
Oh, awesome. Because I connected the dots because, okay, well, one, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, and she has a song called London Boy, and she talks about all the areas, and she
Oh,
mentioned Brixton, and I was like, oh my God,
oh,
that's Alex's son's name. I wonder if it's connected. Well, wherever you want to start, we could totally start. Like, I want to hear about, when you got pregnant with Dakota and how your
sure.
pregnancy was. Yeah.
That's a good story. Let's do that. Let's start there chronologically. Where did I get pregnant? I guess technically Dakota was conceived in New York. So my husband and I were getting ready to go to Morocco for our wedding. And we were staying at a friend's house in the West Village in Manhattan, I guess, I believe. And yeah, she was conceived there, but then flash forward and we got married, and then we had a little honeymoon in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco after our wedding. And I like kind of reached out and I'm like, that's funny. And so literally 3 days after our wedding, we found out we were pregnant with Dakota with a pregnancy test in Arabic. Thank goodness, plus and minus is the same everywhere in the
Oh,
world.
interesting. Good to know.
Yes. So I had to like get the manager of the hotel, who is also a dear friend we got married at, to like go get a pregnancy test for me. Anyway, yeah. So it was yeah, so she was there with us at our wedding, and funny enough, two other of my friends actually found out they were pregnant either like right before my wedding, right on my wedding, actually three right after my wedding. So they were like, something was in the water there. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So that's where we found out.
Well, were you doing the FAM, that method? Were you on birth control?
Yes, I always did fam. I was on birth control, but I stopped when I was like 21 or 22. So I hadn't been on it for, I don't know, over a decade at that point. Yeah, about a decade. Um, yeah, we were doing fam and sometimes condoms, but I think, it was just like whatever, we're getting married and we wanted kids, and so yeah, it just
Can I?
happened.
Well, how did you even hear about FAM? Because I mean, I've heard about ovulation and finding a window, but how did you? I mean, because I started with birth control pills in my 20s and then
Yeah.
went to an IUD, and yeah, how did you know about it?
I had a long-term boyfriend, and when I broke up with him, I just really wanted to get off hormones. And so I don't know, it started, I guess, with just like, I don't want to keep putting this in my body. Like, and that was like kind of my number one. So I stopped that. And then I was like, so how do I, it was like very basic, like, so how do I even know now I'm gonna get my period? And like I literally, I think I just downloaded an app. I was just like, I need to intuitively like educate myself. When is my period? When do I ovulate? When do I not? Whatever. It was probably out of vein, like, when can I go to the beach? And I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure it wasn't like a very spiritual journey there, but yeah, and I think it just one thing led to the other, and I started researching that. And yeah, fertility awareness method just kind of came into my screen. Yeah.
Okay, so then you're pregnant. You have your wedding.
Pregnant, we have our wedding. We go back to New York after the wedding because it was our plan. We had both lived there for I had lived there for almost a decade, and my husband had lived there for like 5 or 6 years, and together. And we have a broker. We go around the city. We're looking for an apartment. And we just had this moment where we saw these children kind of come out of this preschool, and they were all kind of leashed together, and they were led out to the front door. And I'm not kidding you. And this is nothing against Manhattan, because I love Manhattan. I have a lot of friends there, but they were led to a parallel parking spot that was, and I'm not kidding you, chalked off. They drew a chalk, like a circle in the parallel parking. And they were like, "Go play, children."
Oh my God.
And Gilbert and I literally look at each other, and we were like, "Nope, nope, nope, no." Anyway, so it was just kind of this reaction. And I'm from Midwest. I'm from Minnesota. And we were about to go home, I think probably for like Thanksgiving or something. And we just kind of just said, fuck it. And we just moved back to Minnesota. Yeah. We just kind of wanted, I was pregnant. It was our first. We wanted to settle down. We had like stuff in storage in 3 different states, like move across the country, 2 offices. So yeah, so we moved back here. With my first, I didn't have a home birth. I had a highly medicalized sabotage birth, basically, in the hospital for my first one. And then the journey from my first to my second led to my home birth with my second child. I'll just give you a little backstory. So we were home. It was going pretty well, and everything was fine, more or less. I don't know. I found an OB. I thought that was just like what was in my brain right there. Like, you just find an OB and go check it out. I guess that's just like where I was at that point. And so found one, and I didn't really vibe with her. I asked her to do some blood work, which I thought was normal because I hadn't had any a while. Now I was pregnant, and I just kind of wanted to know. And specifically, I was like, "Can you run just like a vitamin D serum, And she was like, "Oh no, look, but it doesn't even matter what your vitamin D is, because it doesn't affect the fetus in any way." And I was like, so that was kind of the first, like, what the fuck moment, where you're like, how can something that affects me not affect my baby? Right. And vice versa. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously there are exceptions, but just on
Mhm.
like a general commonsensical level, like, why would it be that if I had high vitamin D, and this is just an example, or low vitamin D, that wouldn't affect anything?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I kind of pushed back, and then she sent me some very weird studies that basically showed nothing. And so I was like, I don't know, I'm not into it. And then so we go on, and it's my 20 week, or whenever they do that blood glucose, I drank that crap. And she calls me and says, "Oh, you're so high off the charts, your glucose, you have gestational diabetes. We won't even test you again. You need to go see a nutritionalist, and find an endocrinologist, and all of this stuff." And I'm just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What?
Wait,
Everything was,
so with this glucose test, did
yeah,
they give it to you out of routine or because there was a red flag?
out of routine. It was just whatever magical golden flag week that they usually give all these women this glucose test. Yeah. Um, anyway, so at that point, I was not feeling her. I had had this kind of diagnosis, even though I had read up on it and said, since it's so high, why don't we just retest it? It seems weird to me, considering I've never had any issues. And anyway, yeah, diabetes is not a thing in my family.
So is this they had you take that sugary drink? Oh, okay.
Yeah, the glucala. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying. So so you don't eat, you're pregnant, then they make you drink pure sugar, and then wait, and oh, magical. Did your blood sugar go up? Oh my God, are you serious? Anyway, so I found another OB at that point, who was like more, I thought was like more holistic. This is where I was at the time. I was like, oh, they have midwives in their group. They must be like super, hippy dippy holistic, but like Anyway, yeah, I learned later that that was not the case. So because I had this diagnosis, they just fear mongered me the whole rest of my pregnancy. It was absolutely horrible. They said that once I turned 32 weeks and I switched around, I don't know. I had switched within 4 weeks of the switch. They had this protocol that said I have to get bi-weekly ultrasounds. Yes, because in case there is some sort of fetal demise, you want to catch it like every 2 or 3 days. And then they were like, oh, and we really wish we were open on the weekends. Oh, but we're not, so you can't have a third one. So we'll just hope, we catch it between the two ultrasounds. Yeah, I mean, it was just so. I remember having them print out a sheet. I mean, 2 pages, all of these appointments long, because I scheduled all of the ultrasounds and ultrasound, you're sitting there waiting. Did she move? Did she hiccup? Did she sucking her thumb? And then if you don't get the right response, then they send you in for a stress test, or then they hook up, on the heart monitor, and you sit in this little room all by yourself. It was literally horrible, basically, the entire time. And I kept thinking to myself, this is ridiculous. And I kept looking up at the stats and thinking the increased risk for this fetal demise they're talking about is actually no higher than so many other normal things. I mean, and of course, let's not go into the medicalization of the labs. And anyway, I'll stop there. But yeah, it just, there were just bombs going off in my head. But, you're 35 weeks pregnant with your first kid. And I just was not aware enough to say, this is fucked, basically. So went along with it. Yeah.
So during this time, like, you're is your husband coming with you, and is he kind of just like, yeah, we're going with this, because maybe he doesn't know a lot either about all this stuff, of course.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was just so many appointments. He did come with me to some, and he definitely like made a concerted effort to be supportive and stuff, but it was just an insane amount of appointments on top of just like the doctor checks too, which did not include the ultrasound appointments. Yeah, so he did his best, but no, we both thought it was just out of control, basically. There was an extreme incongruence from the way that I embodied the pregnancy versus the way that my doctors and practitioners were speaking about my pregnancy.
Yeah. And did that impacted how you were feeling overall? It caused you stress?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because when they're constantly saying, when you are going into these appointments based on the validation and the justification, you are saving your baby, or they are telling me how to do that. This is part of the prescriptive analysis of my pregnancy, and this is what I have to do in order to be safe. That forms the entire energetic sphere around the pregnancy. So then I'm 35, 36, 37, 38, whatever, and then so I go in, I think it was 5 or 6 days before my due date. I was due in the summer. And I go in for acupuncture to the acupuncturist I'd been seeing, and I turn over on my stomach. She had one of those pillows, and she said, "Oh, that's weird. There's a tick on your neck." And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." And she just like took it off and threw it in the garbage. And now in hindsight, that was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. But anyway, so I just, went about my day, whatever. And then I woke up the next day after that and had this huge nerve migraine, basically on the same side of which it had bitten my neck. And so, go into my doctor and say, yeah, I woke up with this huge migraine, but they also found a tick. And she said, oh, well, it probably has nothing to do with the tick. It's just you probably are getting preeclampsia. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have any high blood pressure now, right? No. And I haven't had any high blood pressure readings my entire pregnancy, right? Right. Okay. So and then she goes to me, you must have atypical preeclampsia. I'm not kidding you. This is real. This has happened. And I'm like, so I have a condition of which I have no symptoms for that condition. I mean, I'm trying not to laugh, but that's what I have. According to you, yes, that's what she told me. It looks me straight at the eye and says, yes, because in her mind, nothing could actually be wrong with you that is outside of this obstetric vacuum, right? Like nothing could be wrong with a pregnant person that has nothing to do with pregnancy. But you could see at that moment, though, that was just the limits of her lens. There was no further, she had no more tools to pull from, you know, and it was like almost thwarting a holistic thought that something could be wrong with one of her patients as pregnant that really has nothing to do with pregnancy. So anyway, so they said we should induce you right now, and I said no, that's not going to happen, sorry. And so, but then they said, well, in order for you to go home, and this was in the hospital because the only way I could see my OB in the was at the hospital because she was on call at that point. And anyway, so they said, well, the only way that we're going to let you go home is if you, you know, go buy a blood pressure monitor yourself and do your blood pressure like basically every 6 hours and check in, and every 6 hours and check in to make sure like you're not, you know, skyrocketing. Mind you, had no blood pressure issues. So I do that for like 3 days, and it was a real big toll on me mentally. You know, you're trying to get into the zone of having a baby, and you know, you're just waiting. They treat you like you're just this ticking time bomb, you know, you're gonna explode and have to come back in, so you better not leave. Anyway, so I go back in. This was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then finally on Sunday I was just like, fine, fuck it, whatever. So I go in for like a Sunday night induction because my doctor was on call that Monday. So I thought, oh, they'll juice me Sunday and then she'll be there on Monday, whatever.
Yeah.
So the way that Lyme works is that they create biofilms around your cells, basically. So they make it hard for things to penetrate. That can be medication, that can be minerals, that can be just, you know, your general mitochondrial function. And so when they tried to induce me, it didn't work and I only realized this later because the Lyme had taken over my body and was basically not letting anything penetrate and work. So that was a nightmare. And then that morning, after the first try of the induction, I woke up with like kind of like I had this like really like sparks on my head, and it started itching and stuff. And I was like, that's weird. And so, you know, I guess it was like Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday. And I was like, what is going on? And then finally, you know, again, preface, nothing can be wrong with a pregnant person except something that has to do with pregnancy. And finally they called an infectious disease doctor. But before that, they had been treating me like an Ebola patient. Because they didn't know what was wrong with me. They had actually put on hazmat, and this is pre-COVID. They had put on hazmat suits. They'd put a sign on the door that says, infected, do not answer. Oh, no, enter on your own risk. I mean, this was insane. And so then finally, because I sent a picture to my other doctor who was like, I think you have shingles, dude. Like, why don't you get them to like call an infectious disease person? Anyway, so the infectious disease guy walks in with jeans and a t-shirt, not kidding you. And he goes, yes, of course you have shingles. And that because Lyme, when it becomes active, it can also force into action other dormant things that you had. So that was just a manifestation of getting bit by the tick. It's common, albeit not normal. So anyway, so he walks in full on, you know, no mask, no hazmat suit. And he's like, these people are fucking crazy. Literally, this is what he said. He said the CDC is off the rocker, and shingles is not a disease that, you know, no, you're not going to give it to anyone. Anyway, it was a nightmare. So then he started me on the viral stuff for the shingles, but meanwhile my eyesight had become so sensitive that I couldn't even look at the lights and the sounds. I mean, on top of it, I'm trying to be in labor.
Oh my
Anyway, so
gosh.
that's the scene of it. So it's a nightmare. So the induction doesn't work. And then they go on to say, oh, well, maybe we'll try the Foley balloon. So the catheter, where they stick a balloon basically into your cervix and fill it with water and hopefully like to crank it open
Yeah.
like a crowbar.
Oh my gosh. Wait, so
So
at this point, real quick, did you have a birth plan?
oh my God, 3 pages long. Yeah. And my doula was there. And so every 4 or 6 hours, we're trying to reread the birth plan to the doctors, the new doctors, and the new nurses, and the new doctors, and the new nurses. Yes, nightmare. And my poor husband. Anyway, so we're like 2 days in now, I guess. And
you have the Foley
so I
book?
have the Foley. We're on the second round of induction, meaning they cranked it all the way up to the highest amount, and then you have to basically start over because it has to go up incrementally.
The size of the bulb.
No, sorry, the Pitocin drip.
Okay.
But yes, that too. The Foley has to be incrementally increased. Yeah, they're not just gonna like blow it up, whatever. So yeah, the most pain I've ever been in, including birthing a 10-pound baby in my bedroom, naturally, was when I was on Pitocin with the Foley balloon inside of me. And those two unnatural situations are going on at the same time. Yeah, it was horrible. It was literally horrible. Anyway, still didn't work. So they stopped the Pitocin, kept the Foley drip. So there was like a little bit of movement, I guess. Took out the Foley, I think did another round of Pitocin. Honestly, it's a little bit of a blur, but I know there was 3 rounds of Pitocin. And then so after refusing an epidural for, I think it was like 58 or 60 hours, my birth was like 72 hours. I finally caved in. I just could not handle the pain anymore. And then again, the epidural didn't work. Didn't work once, then they did it again, only worked on one side. Then they had to give me 3 epidurals to get both sides working. So 3 rounds of Pitocin, 3 epidurals. I don't know what the number 3 is. Anyway, so I went in the hospital on Sunday. Now it's Wednesday morning. And magically I'm 9 centimeters, and you get ready. You get to push now. Ooh, so exciting. So then the doctor comes in. I guess I'm pushing, and
Wait, so it's been 3 days, and did they allow you to eat anything? Did you get to?
Sort of, yeah, sort of. They stopped once I started dilating. They kind of put the brakes on, and we're like, oh no, you can't have anything. Oh no, you can have ice chips. And then I was just sneaking it because I was so dry in there. It was disgusting. But yeah, I think for like since midnight on Tuesday, they were like, no, in case you have to have a surgical birth, of course, right? But yeah, they did. They slowed the reins, definitely, like the last 12, 18 hours of the situation. Anyway, so all the lights were off. So my doctor had one of those, like, I don't know, when they do the pap smears, like the light that like shines right in your vulva. And her hands are literally inside me. I'm pushing, and all of a sudden I feel my neck, like basically like I can't feel my neck. Like I can feel my neck, but I can't control it anymore. I don't know what happened, some sort of nerve situation. But so my husband is literally holding my neck up, and my feet. So, there's that bar that you can hold on to.
Yeah.
So I like put my feet, like literally epidural legs, put my feet on the bar. My husband is holding my head, my doula's here, my OB, and her hands are inside of me, and the phone rings. Kid you not. Takes her fingers out of me.
Oh my
The
God.
kid is crowning. Yeah. Kid is crowning. Goes and answers the phone. Like, I will never forget her bloody gloves reaching the phone up to her. Yeah. that took a lot of work to work through that. And I remember vaguely, she was talking about someone had a blood clot. I was so focused, but so out of it, but so distracted. It was like I've never had those kind of emotions all at once. Anyway, so the saving grace is, yeah, I pushed her out in like literally an hour after all of that. And she was here. Yeah, without one deceleration with either of us on either monitor. Isn't that amazing? They had never seen that before. They couldn't believe it. It was just unheard of to have that long of a labor and that many interventions and whatever. But the takeaway was that birth was not for her, and she was, heart rate wise, fine. The birth was for me, and thus ensued the next 4 years of my life, figuring out what the fuck just happened to me.
So did they, on your birth plan or, in the hospital after she was born, were they like, okay, vitamin K shot, stuff in the eyes, erythromycin, like, and did you reject all those?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I had already said I didn't, I definitely didn't have erythromycin. I didn't have the Hep B. I can't remember if I said it was okay for vitamin K.
And during all that, are they respectful as in they ask you ahead of time, or is it like you had to, or your doula had to, take the initiation and, and initiate saying, hey, like we don't want that, like as a reminder?
No, it was Groundhog Day. And I, at some point, I mean, I was only, I feel like, coherent, for the first 6-10 hours that I was in the hospital. And then I had to just check out. I couldn't, the pain, I was not there. So I literally turned off my phone. I was just not, I was there, but not really there, and not in a good way that we speak about birth now, in a bad way. Yeah, it was complete survival mode. Of my mind, body, soul, everything about it. So no, it was my doula and my husband had to completely take over, completely, pull people aside, speak to them in the hallway. Thankfully I had like 10 copies of the birth plan. I mean, but no, every single new person, it was like a new day, new shift. Yeah.
And so following that, are you able to leave the hospital next day?
Yes, thankfully I pushed and pushed. So I had her like Wednesday at 11:30ish, and I left that Thursday evening. Yeah, is like late at night, but that was the soonest we could get out. I mean, it was horrible. I was so sick, and I also tore, and they had to stitch me up, and they did the stitches wrong. So they had actually sort of released, and it was like barbed wire inside my vulva. It was actually insane. That's the only description I can have. It was like barbed wire. So I had to go back in and have them redo the stitches without any numbing. And then the eye and the shingles thing was still going on. And the Lyme, which they told me is really not a big deal, which I later find out I have full-blown Lyme disease. Everyone was like, oh no, it's just hard. You're a mom for the first time, medically gaslighting me, basically saying there's nothing wrong with you other than that. And you just might have postpartum depression. No big deal. You can take Zoloft, right?
How was breastfeeding and all that with Dakota?
Breastfeeding was actually okay after we got off to a little bit rocky start. I don't know. She was just, I think, didn't have the greatest latch, which I found out later. She has a tongue tie, but I wasn't educated enough to understand how that affects breastfeeding with my first. But yeah, it was okay. I was just so sick and I just didn't have the reserves and the physical fortification to continue to nurse her for as long as I wanted. I think I did it 7, 8, and then by 9 months I was kind of struggling, and I switched. Yeah.
Were you able to process what this all happened, like with your mom, with friends?
Yeah, not at all. I was unavailable for processing, basically. At least on a mental sphere. I was so physically weak, tormented, bloated. Yeah, it was horrible. I could hardly walk for weeks after. I had to carry around a donut with me. I didn't want to go in the car. My parents were trying to be helpful and saying, just come over and bring the baby and we'll watch them and you can sleep here. But you don't want to leave your house with all the baby stuff and like you don't want to travel like that and then also sleep in a bed that is not yours. Anyway, the intention didn't really match the therapy that they were trying to offer, even though it was well intentioned. But yeah, I was just so unavailable for processing. And I remember my doula saying to me, should we talk about it? You had a really traumatic birth. And I'm just looking at her and I was like, no, I didn't. Oh, that wasn't trauma. And so that was really the next kind of layer of initiation for me, was realizing and owning up to the fact and then incorporating in my vocabulary with with authenticity that my birth was traumatic and they did traumatize me and this is why.
Did you and Killy have like a kind of like a debrief together on everything that happened?
Not for a long time. And honestly, I don't think we both fully processed the birth until we were pregnant with our second. And then we could it was like that final layer of integration with the gift of clarity, with the gift of relativity, with you can do it differently and people do it differently and we're going to do it differently. And that is why. She was a great baby. I mean, started sleeping through the 9 to 10 weeks. I think she just knew. She was like, Mom, like, I'm going to be this is how I'm going to take on the world because I know you need, a little TLC and let's do this together. And I didn't really realize that until it was, in my hindsight, and I could really feel through that experience with her. But I've told her birth story and yeah, she's a really special kid. Yeah.
Now it's 4 years later. You're pregnant with Brixton.
Yes. So from the birth of Dakota, I really launched into, after I was kind of mentally capable of processing things, my hero's journey, the healing journey of my life, both physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, every kind of literally. Ended up, really redefining what responsibility is, really redefining what safety is, really sort of accessing my relationship to systems, whether that be educational, medical, on all kinds of levels. Like, who is the authority? Who has authority over me? What choices do I have? How does the world really operate? And how do I fit in? And how do I want people to access me? And how do I want to access them? And, how do I fit into everything here? And again, so Brixton, it was I had just completed I was doing ozone therapy for my Lyme treatment. And I had just kind of finished this 9-month round of it and this big detox. And my husband and I had really kind of gone into doing full moon rituals together. That was kind of our thing. And we were in Arizona. And it was just a big full moon. And I don't know, things happened. And actually it was the middle of the pandemic and we had rented an RV and we were driving across the country actually. So we drove from Minnesota, we took
cool.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Was it the Cruise America one?
I don't know what Cruise America is, but it was a big 32
okay. Dang, okay.
Yeah, it was like over like the Christmas holiday, whatever. So we leave right after. The full moon is like the 20th, 29th, or 30th of December, and we leave right after to go back on our way to the Midwest, make our journey home. And like 2 or 3 days later, it's like January 2nd or 3rd, and Dakota, we're like driving down the road in our RV, like so excited. I think we were in New Mexico, and she turns to me and she goes, "Mommy, you have a baby in your belly." And I was like, "What?" Like, no, I was like, I was like, "Killy, did you read her a book about, a family and the mom's pregnant or something?" And like trying to like, and she was just like, "No." And, she was only 2 at this point. So,
Wow.
you have a baby in your belly. I was like, "Oh, okay." Anyway, so that next day we were boondocking in New Mexico with this family actually, and Killy and I woke up really early, and it was cool. It was like in on the New Mexico Arizona border, so it was kind of this desert mountain brush kind of like landscape. It was very cool. And so we wake up really early to watch the sunrise, and I just basically had this vision of Isis on her wings, and it was so very clear, and it was in the landscape in the mountains right there. So let's flash forward. So then 5 weeks later, I'm like, oh my God, I think I am fucking pregnant. Dakota was right.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I did. I took a pregnancy test. I just took one, and I was like, yep, I knew it. I mean, I knew it already.
Yeah.
But I still needed that confirmation, I guess. So I asked my doula, I'm like, how do you like not birth in a hospital? Like that was basically like, it wasn't like anything for anything. It was just like, how do I not go back there basically? And, and I had been listening to home birth stories, and I mean, not with huge intention or anything, because we weren't actually trying to get pregnant, but thus my 2 children. And she was like, well, you can have a home birth, or you can have a home birth, or you can birth in a birth center, but those are pretty much the 2 options, unless, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So I was like, who do you really like? If you could birth with any midwife, in the whole state, who would you go? And she said, this woman named Jessica, they called her Oma, for grandmother. And so I went and met with her. At the time, she was working in a birth center as a midwife. She was a certified professional midwife, but also had done many, 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 many years. She's in her 60s, many years of home births. And anyway, so about a month after, I'd had like one appointment with her. And a month after, she was basically like, yeah, I'm leaving and I'm just going to do home births. I can't fucking do this anymore, because it was the middle of COVID, and, shit was just getting crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And we aligned on many levels in terms of medical freedom and choices like that. And she just really resonated with me. And so I was like, yeah. So I went home and I was like, Killy, we need to have this kid at home. And he's like, okay. I was like, so the midwife's going to come over and we're going to have a talk, and then it's going to be great and whatever. And he was like, okay. I could tell he was like being very, I mean, he's very thoughtful with his words, but I could tell he was like, kind of like, okay, let's see what this bitch is up to now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she came over and we had the most wonderful conversation. And yeah, it was like after that meeting, it was a no brainer. It was just like nothing ever felt so right.
At this time, did you know anyone personally that had a home birth?
Not like that was very close in my inner circle, but a few like friends of friends and stuff like that. But no one that I could call up and be like, hey, how'd it go? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And during this time, were you sharing it with your mom or your family, like, hey, I'm thinking about this? Or did you kept it under the covers until you knew it was really going to happen?
Yeah. So originally, as with anything, and, through the phases of enlightenment you go through, you get to a phase where you learn about these things, you can't unlearn them, and then you want to share them and be like, yo, did you not know this? Like, this is the greatest thing fucking ever.
Yeah.
And so I tried to, before I had really decided about a home birth, approach both my parents to discuss like a birth center birth. My dad, really understands what midwives are, because he's in medical real estate and he's built actual offices for midwives and stuff like that. But unfortunately, they were not receptive to that path choice. So I basically didn't discuss it with them after that. I tried 2, 3 times, and then I just felt like I kind of struck out, and there wasn't really any positivity that was going to come from trying to force my decisions on them, which really I didn't need their permission to do what I
Mm-hmm.
was doing. I would have loved their support, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But no. So basically after that, I just, yeah, didn't say anything.
Did it feel with the second time around, because I only have one kid.
Yeah.
Did it feel very different than your first pregnancy? What were you eating? Did you change your approach? Like any kind of shifts?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I had this kind of like, am I going to get gestational diabetes, thing hanging over my head again. But I had read so much research and Lily Nichols, and anyway, I just really done a deep dive and was speaking to doulas and midwives and just a lot of people kind of bouncing off experiences. I just didn't really feel like I ever really had it in the first place for my first pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really feel like I was going to get it again or, get it. But that being said, I did eat much healthier, and maybe that was just the blessing in disguise. Like my first pregnancy, I really loved ice cream. Like that was my thing. I like, and I'm usually not like a huge sweet person. Like if I'm gonna like go crazy, like I really love just like a meal, like I'm like a
Mm-hmm.
savory kind of gal. Um, but I think, yeah, my second one I did out of my own volition. I got one of those like the arm monitors that you can scan your own blood sugar, because I do have a
Okay.
functional medicine doctor, and that was just
Okay.
great. So I declined all the testing. I did no vaccines, no testing, no blood draws, no ultrasounds,
Yeah.
anything. But I did do that because I was curious, like, and I think it was a good little lens into, I mean, biohacker people do that anyway, just to like get a grasp on your glucose levels. And there was really never any issue. And I ate so much more fat, so many more healthy fats, so much higher
Mm.
protein, so much more meat. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just felt so much more nourished.
Mm.
Yeah, on that level. And I had really gotten into the raw milk thing and, fermented sourdough, and just like the building blocks of my food were different, even if the same types of food I was eating were the same. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I did buy the Lily Nichols book as well when I got pregnant. Did you use any other resources or books during this pregnancy? Like, did you buy a shit ton of books? Because I did.
Oh, I'm a huge book whore. Yeah. I mean, I should really have a list of them. But no, I mean, there's actually a Lily Nichols book specifically for gestational diabetes.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like a different edition.
I
So
don't
that
have
was
that one.
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And I joined your Facebook group and kind of went on a little deep dive there. But came out relatively, in a short period, to just realize this is what I need to do. Yeah, I mean, I like reading Ina May Gaskin, and things about just hearing like wonderful, positive birth stories. And then I did find Free Birth Society during that pregnancy as well. So their podcast, listening to, I was just much more of like a positive literature consumer instead of a fear
Mm.
literature
Mm-hmm.
consumer as I was in my first. I wanted to hear good fucking stories and good stats, and maybe that's living in the clouds a little, but that is the other side of the coin with every single statistic, with every single story. Um so yeah, that was really helpful.
Does Oma come to visit, and you have appointments with her now? She comes to
Yeah,
talk with
we
you?
had a few appointments, and it was just at my house. Super simple, mostly just like talking, how are you doing? How's it going? I went over everything I really wanted in the first meeting, and that was mostly what I didn't want, actually. And that was, her to force me into something I didn't want to do, or an unwanted vaginal check, or one of my big things was because of that phone call and all of the technology in the hospital with my first birth, I just did not want any technology. Like, I was like, please don't wear an Apple Watch that then beeps
Yeah.
every in 30
Yeah.
seconds. It drives me nuts. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
If you want your phone, please just put it outside the birthing room. I mean, I was pretty low key about it, but I was just like, I just don't want any technology in the room. I mean, outside of the electromagnetic fields, which we could talk about, but it was more of like a mental processing thing for me.
Mhm.
Um, and that was a little bit of a discussion. I really became friends with my doula, and so she was coming back for my second one. So that was a little bit of a discussion with her. But the birth was so fast, she ended up missing it anyway. So that's a whole. But
Okay, so let's get into your birth. You had a due date. Like with mine, I didn't want to put energy into the date. I
yeah,
kind of made it vague every time someone was asking me how many weeks I was. Even like I kind of knew, but I was kind of like, I don't know. Like I didn't want to give them the power of that either. Cause if, 30 something weeks rolls around, they're like, oh, really? Like, you should get, I didn't want to even throw that in anyone's
yeah,
field. Mhm.
absolutely. And I wish I had done that myself. With my third, no one will be
Yeah.
knowing.
I'll just be like, yeah.
Maybe not even my husband. No, yeah, I really respect that. I did have, an estimated due date. I knew it was, sometime at the end of September.
Mhm.
And I had gone to the apple orchard with my daughter the day before and had walked all around, and that was really fun. And then she had actually gone to my parents for a sleepover. And then I woke up at like 5:20, 5:30, and I had like one sensation. And I was like, that's new.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't know. I was just immediately called. I got up. My husband was still sleeping. I lit my birth candle and I just went in the shower. I'm not exactly sure. I just needed to like feel like some like water. I think it was just like the energy
Yeah.
was really intense. I needed another like element to funnel that with me. Then it was just like full on sensations they were asymmetrical. So I remember my right side was a lot stronger than my left side. And I was just sitting in there in the shower, and I remember my husband coming, and the midwife was on the phone, and she was like, he was like trying to like time them or whatever, even though we said whatever, we weren't going to do that. And basically no one talked about anything. They were just like, she's in full blown labor. Like let's just not even, we're done.
Wait, so
Like,
did your waters break?
no. Mm-mm.
Okay.
We're in my bedroom, and my bathroom is right there. And then we also have a birthing pool set up like in the bedroom on the floor, kind of in front of my altars and stuff. At some point I felt called. I was like done with the water. I wanted to stop. I wanted something to stop hitting me. I just remember being like, okay, I'm done with you now, water. Thank you. Now I need element air or something. So I like got out. I don't know why. I put a bra on, and anyway, you do weird things in labor. And then went and just got on like a yoga mat in front of my altar. And then I think that's when the midwife came. It was like an hour and a half later, which ended up being an hour and a half, I think, before I gave birth, or just an hour. She like put her hand on my back, and she was just like, you're doing great, or something like that. Like, I just remember like really just like thanking her, non-verbally, like, don't ask me any questions, like, thank you. Like, and literally she did almost nothing, which was fantastic. She told me after the birth, she was like, if every birth was like yours, I would never retire, basically.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really nice. Anyway, so they're cracking on, still asymmetrical. I'm like trying to put my leg up on a ball, and I was just like, whatever. And she was like, do you want to try? I think one of the only things she said to me was, do you want to try to get in the water? Something like that. And I was like, sure, let's get back in the water. Yeah. So I got in the birthing pool, and I'm like kind of, I don't know why, I'm like a frog kind of floating on my stomach, and my hands are over the lip of the pool, and it just gets so intense. It is so intense that I remember at one point just I mean, like my eyes were closed the entire time. I had Ante Nasifati, which is a Kundalini yoga mantra playing for the entire 3 hours, like literally just on repeat. And
And what's Killy doing right now?
well, Killy right at this moment, or in the moment that I'm channeling in this story, is he's literally, they were so intense I could hardly keep my head above the water. So he's literally like, so I don't inhale my poop water, like I could just feel his, like he's trying to very gently, like, you know, keep my face above the water basically, while I am just screaming. I mean, I am roaring. I'm sure this was the point of transition. But yeah, and then I remember his hands are like kind of on my face, on my neck, and I'm like grabbing his arms. And then I think Jessica says, you know, the head's out. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay, great. And so then I sit up kind of, and I kind of ground down in the pool, and I'm like, okay, this is it, you know? And then that vision of when we were in New Mexico, the day after Dakota tells me I have a baby in my belly, and the same wings of Isis like spread over, and at the same time the wings of Isis kind of open, I literally feel my pelvis, like the outlet basically just like open. Like it was just like, this is what you need. This is the last thing. And then yeah, and then he was born literally right then. And then I turn around and I grabbed him, and yeah, that was it. I literally just I was like resting my hand here. I was like, oh, I did it. I fucking did it. That's what I said. I think that was, I was like, hi, Brixton. I fucking did it. And, you know, we have like basically no pictures. We have one picture and no video and no anything, because I didn't want, you know, anything in there, which was exactly how it needed to be. But in hindsight, I wish I had something. But anyway, it was wonderful. It was magical. It was spiritual. It was just the most amazing portal I have ever been through, ever, and I want to do it again.
When you were in the birth pool, was this all he just came out? There was no feeling of pushing?
No, there was no feeling of pushing. There was an extreme feeling of stretching.
Wow, amazing.
That it was all just kind of like, I know these people feel like a big, you know, a lot of people feel big pressure down. Mine was more like on a on a lateral, yeah, movement, horizontal feeling. I did actively push a little at the end, maybe, you know, I don't know, at the very very end after his head was out. The embodied feeling was not a down, it was more need to go out. Yeah.
Okay, so Brixton was born. You gave birth kind of like in a frog position,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you bring him to your arms. Is he crying immediately?
He's not crying. He literally, I have him in my arms. I remember he looked up at me. He like smiled, and then literally just like went back to sleep.
Cute.
He was like, "Hey, mom, I'm here." Okay, cool. Thanks.
And your midwife is right there. Is she
Mhm.
just, giving you the space?
Yeah, I don't remember her really. I mean, that's a good thing, right? I don't remember her, her like being yeah, involved really. I mean, she was there at the other side of the tub. I mean, she's there. But yeah, she definitely gave us the space.
And then when do you go out of the tub, and what do you do with your placenta?
I remember her asking me a couple times, and I was saying I'm not ready yet. So I sat in there until it was cold, basically, and then I was like, okay, we got to get out now. This kid's cold. Yeah, and then I just got in bed, and placenta still inside. Yeah, I was just holding him, and he latched before I delivered the placenta. And then I was just like kind of, I know it's kind of weird, but I was just like in bed, kind of laying there, and it just kind of, I don't know, came out and put
Oh
it in
wow.
my salad bowl. Yeah.
It just came out. I had to push mine out.
Yeah, I don't remember it really
Yeah.
being. I did have pretty significant after pain. So like I felt it. It was
Yeah.
contracting, and it definitely like delivered, but it wasn't like I didn't have to like bear down or anything like that. No.
Hmm. And what do you do with the placenta?
I wish I had made a print of it because both midwife and my doula, who ended up missing it, the birth, but now is here now, we're like, that's the biggest placenta I've ever seen in my life. With the biggest cord. So now I really wish I had, like, made a print or something. But no, I wanted to burn the cord. I wanted to have a cord burning ritual. So I had bought a little box and had the 2 candles. And when I felt ready, it was a couple hours, I think, after the birth. Yeah, we burnt the cord, but it took so long because the cord was so thick and it started to smell. It was just like burnt flesh at the end of it. It literally took 20, I feel like it took 20, 25 minutes to like
Wow.
get through
Did
it.
you need multiple candles too?
Yeah, like we were afraid they were gonna both run out, but I saved them. We both have like that much left of the candle. We were like holding them, like, "Oh, it's gonna do it," and then it finally did.
That's awesome. And
Oh, and then
so,
sorry, and then I did send my placenta to get dehydrated, and I got a tincture, capsules, and like a balm that I've all used.
oh, oh, cool. Did
Yeah,
you, and is it all gone now?
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, I wish I had more. Literally the last drop. I was like, ah. Yeah.
And so with this postpartum, how was it? Where was Dakota? Was she at a sleepover still?
She was at my parents' house, and then we had um my postpartum doula actually with Dakota, who turned into kind of our caregiver nanny. She's just a wonderful, wonderful woman. Had gone and picked her up from my parents. So technically Dakota was with her and her 3 kids, actually. Yeah. Right
Okay.
now.
How was your postpartum overall? Did you have more support this time? Did it feel, how different did it feel than before?
Because I was so sick the last one, and I also had some like hero complex, I didn't have any kind of overnight support until like 4, 6 weeks after Dakota was born, which in hindsight was a mistake. So this time I took it upon myself and I hired a baby nurse. And then when it got who was going to come and stay for like I think it was 4 weeks. And then I got to like week 38 and I was like, I don't want a baby nurse. What am I doing? What am I talking? What am I thinking? Actually, it was before that I had been percolating on that idea. I was like, why am I going to give my baby to somebody else at night? I don't know. It just kind of clicked. And I was like, if I'm exclusively breastfeeding, what the fuck is she going to do? And she doesn't, and baby nurses don't help the mom. So anyway, that was a whole nother initiation. And she was super pissed when I was like, sorry. But I felt really bad. I gave her the consolation or the cancellation fee, whatever she wanted. But yeah, that just wasn't my truth anymore once I got to almost having Brixton. So I hurried up and I asked Renee, who was the one who Dakota was with, and I was like, I know I didn't ask you at all. And but do you want to help me? And thank God she stepped in and she came over and she was just wonderful. She just yeah, so she really helped me and she is just a nurturer. And my husband also took 2 weeks off, kind of, who yeah was there, but I also just took it. I was just in a much different space mentally. So I was really in the space of like, 7 days in your bed, 7 days around your bed, 7 days in your house. So it was just like, I mean, I was at like day 25 before I even left the house. Like it was just a totally different, experience. And it showed. Yeah.
Mhm. Any lessons from this second birth?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, lesson number 1, I want to do it again. Um, lesson number 2, yeah, I think there's just like a real deep calling for me to go like fully, wild pregnancy, free birth, Emily style. Yeah, for my third, like I really just I feel called to be, although I did really feel like I was alone, I wasn't really alone, but I think there's, those sensations to dive deeper and have, really respect the alchemical transformations that can happen when you are there in the spiritual portal alone and free from any of those bonds in any way. But yeah, I'm very excited.
And how important do you think it was to have your partner there with you, with Killy there?
So important. Yeah. So, so, so important. I mean, we're just a really good match. He just counters my energy in such a positive way. He is an extremely patient human being. Um, I think it's so important to have intimate support there, and you think you have an intimate relationship with your doula or your midwife or whatever, but it's just not the same, having the person who you created this life with, who knows you better than anybody. And I think it's that nonverbal communication, it's that emotional intellect. It's those just looking at him from a side eye, like he knows he has a different language, he has a different interpretive scope and lens, that creates just a sort of flawless, energetic aura about, having an intimate partner like that there. So, and that's actually an impetus for some of the services I will be offering later, because I just think it is so important that your male partners, or whatever partner, your intimate partner, is just on fucking board. And on fucking board is also when to, and also more so when to not be in your face, when to not ask you questions, when to step away, when to get people out of the room. Yeah, it's almost more important what not to do than what to do.
Totally. Yeah. Do you want to share with what you're offering and your business?
Sure, yeah. So through this whole process, I've just obviously been very called to continue this journey. And for me, the journey from my first to second kid now is going to be my business. And so I've started a birth, pregnancy, conception, postpartum, all of the above consulting business, where I'll be offering coaching services to women, men, families, whoever wants to talk about it. We can debrief your story and use, medicine wisdom, story wisdom, to talk about your previous experiences and your future experiences. And then I also started an educational arm, which will be composed of an e-course or also live consulting that goes with it. It's called Alchemical Birth Art. So how to have the most transmutational, transformative pregnancy and birth experience possible.
So cool. I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks. Thank
Well,
you. I'm really
thank you
excited.
so much. I'm so grateful for you to share your stories and being on here.
Thanks. It was really, really an honor. Thanks for having me, Emily.